Okay, so I essentially have the same chart here that I did during the task where I was showing how to use the data. I did change the poverty into a rate instead of a raw number because that would be a lot more meaningful. I left the number of Asian students as a raw number instead of a percent just because, for one, it was so small, and for two, I think I would be curious to know the absolute number of Asians rather than the percentage. Just because that gives me an idea of how many other Asians there are at that school. Whereas the pupil to teacher ratio wasn't anything to mess with there. Okay, now I'm going to notice this little arrow here tells me how quick I want to play it. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. Take a real quick look at what I have here. I have these three schools. Right now we're in 2011. The size of the bubble I've made as the total students. That way, the bigger the bubble, the more students. So, right, Mountain View is going to have the highest student population, Stone Spring has the smallest. On my x-axis, I have the pupil to teacher ratio. So you can see these numbers, maybe if you can't, 11 to 16. Mountain View is going to have the worst teacher pupil to teacher ratio. Stone Springs is going to have the best at this point, and Waterman's closer to Stone Springs. And then we're looking at the number of Asians here on the y-axis. So you can see Waterman has the most Asians at 15 Asian students in the K4. I also have the poverty rate, so that's a color. So blue is going to be the least amount of poverty, where we go up to yellow. This is going to be middle, Stone Spring, and Waterman is going to have the highest poverty rate there. I've selected all three of my schools so I can see them labeled as they're moving around, and I also clicked on trails so I can see as they move over time. So I'm pressing play now. Again, I had slowed that down just a little bit. So what we can see is that Waterman here is moving down and to the right. It's also getting darker. That means a greater rate of poverty, less Asian. Must be Asian student graduated or moved away. And over here, on the other hand, Stone Springs has gained an Asian and is now getting a better pupil to teacher ratio. Mountain View is still hanging out in the corner here with a high pupil to teacher ratio and low amount of Asians. And we've completed now, here we're at 2013. Notice since we only had 3 years, there's only 3 data points on each one. From my perspective, decision making, of course, I would like the most Asians since my daughter is half Asian. So in that sense, and I also care mostly about the newest data is going to be the most important to me. So in that sense, Stone Spring is the winner, followed closely by Waterman. Also, the lowest pupil to teacher ratio is going to be Stone Springs. Waterman somewhere in the middle. Now, I'm going to add some anecdotal data there. So I visited each of these schools, and I happen to know that Stone Spring has the highest special ed population in the district, which means that they have a lot of teachers devoted towards working with students one-on-one. And again, not good or bad, but that could be contributing to this pupil to teacher ratio. So that would be something I would want to couple the quantitative statistical evidence together with that anecdotal evidence to get the biggest picture to make my full decision there.